Despite being part of a cult that tears families apart, asks you to invest pretty much all of your life savings, relies on slave labor, causes you to come into people's houses and fuck up their couches, grooms young women to date him and possibly marry him, causes him to talk shit on interviews.
Here's the problem. You don't know the history of psychiatry. I do.
And, at least in the past, being good friends with the psychopathic leader of this said cult. Tom Cruise makes great movies. Okay, he makes some great movies. Mission Impossible Fallout is the 6th film in the Mission Impossible franchise, which I think started in 1997 or something like that, maybe even earlier. And what's amazing is that this franchise seems to show no signs of slowing down creatively. The movie is perfect summer popcorn fare, even though it is a long film. It's a very long film. I tend to break up movies into 3 acts, which I think is typical for Hollywood. But I couldn't, it was hard to determine where the first, second, and third act begin. As far as I'm concerned, there's a 4th act, because when you think this movie is over, there's a coda or another scene or another setup that just takes the movie over the top. Put it this way, when it starts off, it's good, it's good, but I found it a little confusing. I really had to focus to concentrate on what was going on, and there were a lot of times I wished I could like treat it like a DVR and just rewind or put on subcaptions or captions so that I could fully understand what they were saying and read what they were saying. But I mean, if you just go along with it, even if you get lost, it's an adventure. I love the cinematography. They shoot in London, they shoot in Paris. I'm a huge francophile. Je parle un peu français, j'ai étudié depuis 12 ans. There are scenes that just, you wonder, how is it possible that they managed to film these scenes? I've been to Paris 3 times, and I've been to the Arc de Triomphe. There's a scene with Tom Cruise on a motorbike, and that is one of the most treacherous roundabouts I've ever seen. It's so bad, they don't allow you to cross the street to get to the Arc de Triomphe. You have to go underground and through a tunnel to get up onto the island where the arch is. But they somehow shot Tom Cruise riding his bike into traffic on that roundabout. I mean, I salute the production team, the line producers, the people who set up all of the locations. Hats off. Man, it's some really great photography, and just the editing is amazing. This was directed by Christopher McQuarrie. I think he directed the previous one, I'm not really sure, and I really didn't like 5 that much. It was okay. I think he directed that one, but man, he really steps up his game here. Well, I say steps up his game. I'm sure a lot of you did like 5, and I'm not mad at you, but he brought the goods here. Then the action moves to London, and we got Tom Cruise doing what he does best, and that is running. There's a whole sequence, lasts 2 to 3 minutes of him running, and of course, you have to accept that the heroes in these films never run out of breath, they never break a sweat, their hair is still in perfect condition after running for what looks like 10 miles, chasing the bad guy. But in that same sequence is the scene that, if you recall, what was it, last year, I believe, maybe year before last, he was doing a stunt, and we all know Tom Cruise does a lot of his own stunts, where he was rigged up and he was jumping from a rooftop to another rooftop, and I guess, I don't know if it was something that the special effects guys or the stuntmen rigged incorrectly, but he broke his leg or broke something after he hit the side of the building, and that shut down production for some period of time. It's just amazing what this guy, and I'm all over the place, but I know I went at Tom Cruise a little bit at the beginning, but I gotta give him props. The guy is, what, 54, 55 now? He's older than I am. No way am I gonna be running and jumping. Maybe there is something to belonging to this cult, because the guy acts like he's in his 30s. I don't know if it has anything to do with Scientology, but hey, it is what it is. And then there's the last act of this film. I'm calling it an act, maybe it's a scene, I don't know, but it takes place in Kashmir, just southwest of China, and I guess it's in the Himalayan mountains. I'm taking a stab there, but let me back up. There's a scene where you think Tom Cruise is going to catch the bad guy, and he doesn't. And you're like, what? There's more? And then you realize, oh yeah, we do see some helicopters in the snow, right? Okay. Wow, there's a lot more to go in this movie. And at that point, right as before they transitioned from the scene in London to where I thought the movie was going to end to the scene in Kashmir, I was like, oh my God, I'm kind of hungry now. I was kind of ready to go. I got my money's worth. But this scene, I'm going to call it this act of the film, the final act, it comes close to blowing everything I've ever seen from a Mission Impossible film out of the water. Now, a friend of mine tells me that these scenes were shot in IMAX. And I tell you, my favorite Mission Impossible is Mission Impossible 4, and the reason that is because of one scene where Tom Cruise is scaling the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world in the United Arab Emirates, if I'm not mistaken, in Dubai, I believe. And it was shot in IMAX. Now, as I said, my friend tells me that the final act of this movie was shot in IMAX, so yeah, they got my money. I gotta go see this. When you think this movie has everything it has to give you, that happens, and I was on the edge of my seat. I mean, and none of this stuff, these spy antics, these impossible stunts that they do, these things that would never happen in real life, none of it's fresh or original, but the way it's shot, the way it's edited, Tom Cruise's commitment to it, I mean, that's him hanging on a rope. I'm sure he's got wires attached to him that have been rotoscoped out, but to be hanging in the air, I mean, 100 feet up in the air on the struts of a helicopter, I mean, you accept that he gets hit while riding a motorbike full on by a car and just gets up. You accept that the female agent gets hit dead on with a car, tumbles over the top, falls off the back, and just gets up with a Now, as great as this final act was, a couple things that I thought were a little bullshit. There's a scene, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's a climactic moment that we don't actually see. And when we, let's just say there's a blinding white light, and then there's a resolution. I don't think I spoiled anything there, but we don't get to really see the resolution, which I thought was a little bit of a cheat. Also, a big problem, and this is something that I had predicted from the second act. Well, actually, I predicted it from the first act because there's a character here that we see in the trailer, and it reveals the nature of this character. And I have no idea why they did that. I mean, so there was no surprise for me with certain characters. I'm going to keep it vague. There's no surprises for me when there's some reveals because it was already revealed in the trailer. And these trailers are really out of control. The other thing that, I don't know, it wasn't more of a nitpick. I don't know that it bothered me some, but I didn't see the need for them to do it. There's one character, I'm not going to give it away, who returns from previous films that I just didn't see the need for this character to be in the film at all. It just kind of muddies the waters a bit. This character was not necessary at all. That character that I'm speaking of could have been replaced by another actor in the film, Wes Bentley, who I always thought should have been Peter Parker. I always saw him as Peter Parker, even here. When Wes Bentley shows up on screen, he could have fulfilled everything that this other character does. But there's so much crossing and double crossing. It's the total spy trope, and it totally works. Henry Cavill, I mean, he's great in this movie. I've never been that impressed with him as an actor, even in the Man of Steel or Superman role. But here, he's totally convincing. Even his mustache that caused all the controversy for Justice League. Good to see Benji come back and to see Luther come back. I don't understand why Paula Patton can't get a gig on these shoots anymore. I thought she was amazing in, my favorite film of the franchise, Mission Impossible 4. I think that was called, number 4 was called Ghost Protocol. Prior to that moment when I told you that I thought the movie was over, and then I realized, wait a minute, yeah, we still got a long way to go because we got helicopters and mountains in the snow. I was ready to give it 3.5 stars, but after that last act, I'm giving it a solid 4 stars. So in order, in case you care, we got 6 movies. I'm ranking them like this. I'm ranking them 4, 3, 6. 4, 3, and then 6. And then 2, 1, and 5. Now that 1 and 5 might interchange, but there's nothing. I mean, that the scene where he's hanging on over the floor in the wires, and when he's trying to break into to get the knock list from the first movie, yeah, that was an iconic scene. So I got to put 1 before 5. 5 was that was Rogue Nation, which features a character in there's a character in Rogue Nation. Oh, well, there's a couple of characters in Rogue Nation that appear in this film as well. But yeah, 4 stars out of 5. And I guess I should offer up kind of an apology to Mr. Cruise. I found his movies, for the most part, 90% of them entertaining. But I had to get on my political soapbox. I think Scientology is despicable. But having said that, I'm going to go back, and this whole thing right here.
Here's the problem. You don't know the history of psychiatry. I do.
Well, he was talking crazy to Matt Lauer. And Matt Lauer, as we all know, is now an asshole. So, him. And that's the martini.